What is going on, everybody? Welcome to yet another episode of The Road Show. As always, I am your host, Jay. Who else but me? And today, my guest, David Fielding, is in the house, man. Zordon himself here on The Road Show. Man, let me tell y'all something. And I'm not exaggerating one iota here, okay? This is 100% real. He was the quickest guest I ever booked. Like, when I found out I had access to him, 48 hours I had this recorded and ready to go. Like, in 48 hours. I've never set up a booking that fast because, like, I didn't know anything can happen in the world of podcasting. Like, it takes months, almost sometimes to up to a year to book these things with people because of schedules and stuff like that, which is understandable. I never get mad at anybody for, needing to do stuff like that, even if they have to reschedule, whatever it is, it's fine. But the second his name came across my board, I was like, yes, I have to talk to him. I have to talk to him. And the reason why, and we get into this a little bit in the episode, so I won't spoil too much, but I do at least want to say that it's important to note how quickly Power Rangers took the fucking world over. Because even it's hard to say and to explain and to quantify to people that weren't there or were too young to remember how fast Power Rangers became a thing. Because I was probably, I don't know, 8 or 9-ish when it first came out. And maybe a tad bit younger. I don't know. I don't remember the exact timeline per se. But I do remember all my friends group and all of the people my age at that point in time, we all loved Ninja Turtles. And then Power Rangers came on. And it was almost like, I don't want to say overnight, but my recollection, it was very quickly, Turtles were out because they were the hottest thing on Earth. Ninja Turtles were the hottest thing on Earth at one point in time. And just as hot as they were cold when Power Rangers came along. And yes, there was the live action Ninja Turtle movies, but I think that was one of the main differences was Power Rangers were actual people. Now, granted, there was animatronics and, costume clearly, but I think you know what I mean. Like, the Turtles were drawn characters, were turtles who were mutated. The Power Rangers, they were kids like us, so we wanted to be them because in our child minds, that's how we viewed, that's what we wanted to be. We wanted to be superheroes like them. Most people, we were either Team Tommy or Team Jason, and if you were female, more than likely you were Kimberly. And that could change from everybody. But that was from my perspective, that's how I remember it. But man, Power Rangers was one of those things that it was culture, pop culture, and it was everywhere. So it was a big part of my life. The video games, the Sega video game was the first one I ever played when I had a Game Boy. God, this whole episode is going to date the fuck out of me. But when I had a Game Boy, black and white Game Boy, I had the Power Rangers, the movie Game Boy game. I'm pretty sure I still have it up there somewhere in my attic somewhere too. But it was everywhere, and it was one of my favorite things in life. So when David Fielding came up on my feed to book, I jumped all over it and made it happen almost immediately. So, and a real nice, pleasant individual, pleasant soul. And I'm not going to spoil anything else about this episode because if you can't tell already, I'm so excited to even be presenting this to you today, just because I'm such a fan of the series. But anyway, enough of my babbling. Let's get to a word from my sponsor and then my interview with David Fielding. Let's do it, y'all. Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's Jay, and I'm here for W Energy, my sponsors. Now, what is W Energy, you might ask? W Energy is clean, jitterless energy. Better than the canned stuff that you would get at your convenience stores, your gas stations, all that kind of stuff. It doesn't have all that trash in it. Now, how do I know? Because I myself use W Energy. So what I've got here, a couple of limited edition flavors. For instance, W Energy puts out this stuff called Grandpa's Ginger Water. I know it don't sound that great, but it is amazing. Limited run that they came out that I've got actually multiple tubs of. I believe in W Energy. I use W Energy myself. Also, this was just released and it's another limited edition flavor that they come out with, and it's called Pom Blom. It's pomegranate blossom, real nice clean flavor. And a lot of Dubby Energy, whether it be classics like Calio Cream or the Dub Sludge, whatever it might be, it is clean energy. It's not going to make you feel all crappy at the end of the day after using it. Now, here's what I want you to do, because again, they're obviously a sponsor of mine, but what I want you to do is I want you to go to www.dubby.gg, order one of the sampler packs, which you get one of these cool tumblers, a part of the sampler pack, and I want you to grab one, but don't use my promo code. That's right. Don't use my promo code Who Else at checkout, because I want you to try it without thinking I'm just trying to sell you a bill of goods. Try it one time, and then when you go back to buy your second order of Dubby Energy, then use my promo code Who Else at checkout for a 10% discount, because all you're gonna do is try it. I know you're gonna love it. That's how much I believe in this product, and I thank them for sponsoring the show today. What is going on, everybody? Welcome to yet another episode of The Rose Show. As always, I'm your host, Jay, who else but me, and today I am elated to be speaking to this man. He's somebody who stepped into the most legendary roles in 90s TV, if not all of sitcom TV history. He was a mentor to kids all around the country who had never met him before, myself included. The entire lore of what this man's main role in this show centered around was everyday playground games for me and my friends. We would always go out in this, and there would be two different games we would play. It would either be X-Men or it would be Power Rangers. And this individual was the voice behind all of that, and just the ability to be able to speak to him today means so much to me, because it was such a huge part of everything that I was back then. And enough of me doing some hero worshiping. Let me go ahead and get into the introductions. It is David Fielding, aka Zordon, my friend. How are we doing today?
I'm doing all right. Yeah. Glad I could be a part of your playground shenanigans. That's awesome.
Oh, absolutely. That was the first thing when I had the opportunity to talk to you. The first thing I thought was, I have to at least let him know that that was a big part of my playground fandom. And we would for the entire time. It would just be Power Rangers. We were obsessed with it. But let's go ahead and start at the very beginning, because one of the things that I'm definitely interested to ask you about is, what was the process that you went through to land that role? And really, let's take it back to the beginning. Did you know like what this role was going to become, or was it something that you were kind of looked at as, it's just a job? How did that start for you?
So it's kind of a little bit of an involved story if you've got the time.
Absolutely.
So I knew fairly early on that I wanted to be an actor. Sometime like in junior high or in high school, I definitely wanted to be an actor, because I grew up watching movies. I grew up reading comic books, playing Dungeons and Dragons, all that sort of stuff. And I enjoyed watching a lot of the dubbed Japanese shows that they would bring over to the States, whether they were manga anime cartoons like Speed Racer or Marine Boy. But I also grew up watching Ultraman and Spectreman and Battle for the Planets and all that kind of stuff. And then I started to go to school to become an actor, to learn the craft of acting. And I got my undergraduate degree in a place called Southwest Texas State University in San Marcos, Texas. I had a large group of friends there. And when I had graduated from that program and was going on to do my master's degree, a lot of those friends from Southwest Texas, they moved out to California. They went out to Los Angeles to sort of do the things that all actors wanted to do. They wanted to break into commercials or movies or TV. And I spent the next 3 years at the University of Pittsburgh getting my master's degree in the craft of acting. So I spent a lot of years working on that, probably too many to be honest. But when I moved out to California in August of 1992, I was ready. I was 29 at the time. I'm a little bit older than when most people go out to California. You go out there normally when you're 21, 22. So I went out there, with this sort of idea that uh, I was kind of prepared for whatever might come along. And 2 months after I'd been there, one of my friends from Southwest Texas State, a wonderful woman by the name of Stacy Fish, was working at Saban, uh, working in production in their straight to video movies that they were doing back then at that time. And she called me up and she said, "Hey, I'm doing assistant directing work on this kids television pilot called Dino Rangers. They're looking for a role, and I thought you'd be great for it. Do you want to come down and read for it?" I was like, "Yeah, of course. That's why I came out here." And I went down there thinking it was going to be a cattle call, that it would be me, 15,000 other guys. I would go into a room, read my lines into a camera, and then go home and never hear anything. That's what I expected. But when I got down to the location that they had given me, and got up to the, I don't know, third or fourth floor, whatever where I was supposed to go, I found out it was just me and this other guy. And they said, "Hey, we're going to cast this tonight. Are you available to film next week?"
Holy
And
crap.
yeah, and I was not going to say no, I'm not available. So they gave us, the breakdown. You're going to be playing this character of Zoltar, which was the name of the character at the time, and he's a 10,000-year-old wizard trapped in a time warp. There you go. And they gave us the lines, which were basically the lines that Zordon has in the first episode of the show, where he introduces himself to the Rangers and all that stuff. And that gentleman took his lines to one corner of the room, and I took my lines to the other. And we worked on him and stuff. And then he went in first, came out 20 minutes later, and then I went in and met everybody, stood up on a table, read the lines, and a couple hours later, I got a phone call saying, "Congratulations, you got the part." So that's how that worked out. But I mean, I was uh, when they described the character and what they were doing with it, I was already immediately familiar with it because I had grown up watching Ultraman and Spectreman, and understanding this idea of uh, just regular people who would transform into these armored heroes. So I got that. I understood that, and I understood that the character was this sort of splinter character. He was their mentor. He was going to teach them, and so I thought, okay, yeah, I can do that. That's fine. So that's where that came from.
Yeah, sure. And I would also like to point out something that I think is lost in today's world. Once upon a time, you had to really look for anime because, like, my very first anime was Akira. That was the very first
Yeah,
one that I ever saw. And still to this day, I mean, even granted, it doesn't make sense when you really watch it because it's, impartial or incomplete rather. But like it wasn't just available. Like you didn't have Crunchyroll. You know what I mean? Like
right, right.
you had to search. So if you were a fan of anime, you were a fan.
Yes, Speed Racer. I caught it in like fits and starts because I don't remember it ever being like on regularly, or if it was,
Right.
I didn't always have access to it. But anytime it came on, I would sit down and I would watch it because it was just so vibrant, and so it moved really fast, and it had all these great little vocal cues, and all that stuff, and so I just enjoyed the crap out of that. And they had all these other like cartoons of that ilk that had the same sort of cell shaded kind of stuff. I think Hercules was one, and then they had another one called Marine Boy, which was this kid who could swim underwater because he had this special gum that he could chew, and his best friend was a dolphin and all this kind of stuff. So, but again, it was in fits and starts. I never watched it week to week to week. I had to catch it whenever it popped up. So
Yeah. Yeah. And then the last thing I'll say about anime, and then I'll drop it because we could talk about this for an hour, and I don't want I don't want you to spend the whole time talking about it. But every single time, because obviously Dragon Ball Z has just exploded in the last 2 decades. But every single time I see somebody talk about GBZ, I'm like, "But were you watching Toonami before it was all the way dubbed?" Because I was. Did you watch the original? Like, it's the only thing that I'm elitist on. Anything else, I'm like, forget it. But
yeah.
but I've been watching Dragon Ball since before they completed the Frieza saga. Damn it, I want credit for that. But anyway, that's just neither here or there. So when you started doing the role of Zordon, did they outline like because the voice itself is iconic? Like obviously, the character is somebody like you said, obviously stuck in this tube from the child's perspective, but a time warp. But it's the voice that captures you because it sticks out amongst all the other characters. Because mostly you're talking to teenagers who have the high pitchy voice, but this deep and commanding voice. Did they instruct you to do it that way, or is that something that you had to come up with, or what? Take us through the development of what the Zordon character became eventually.
So I spoke about watching movies and enjoying movies and playing Dungeons and Dragons and playing all sorts of different roles in theater because part of my training. And when I got into the room for that audition, I was first of all, I was very lucky to have been called, but I'd also laid the groundwork for all the stuff to be prepared for it. So I was prepared once I got in the room, and I could hear the other gentleman across the room from me. He was doing some sort of um, kind of high pitched mad scientist kind of take on the character. Ah, Power Rangers, attend the viewing globe. And I thought, I really don't know if that's the right fit for this character. He's 10,000 years old. He's been trapped in this time warp this entire time. And I wasn't really given any sort of direction at all. They just wanted to see what I would do with it. And so sitting there and sort of like eavesdropping on this other actor going through his lines and stuff, I was like, no, this is a fatherly figure. This is somebody who needs to be commanding, but he's also a very he's a force for good. He's a force for kindness, and he wants these kids to be protected and to defend the earth. So relying on my love of comic books and mythic stories, I just started to think of this guy as sort of like Zeus on the mountaintop. He had to have this sort of uh, very deep quality. So that's the kind of quality I used when I auditioned, and that ended up being the voice that we ended up using in the show. It's this sort of um, not necessarily a dark Wizard of Oz kind of voice, but it is a very resonant, um, deep voice that people will automatically like, "Oh, what's he saying?" That kind of so that's what I went for, and that's luckily what they chose. So, yeah.
Yeah. Did Were there any challenges to doing that kind? Because for me, for somebody, because obviously I've never done a day of voice acting in my life, was there any challenges that went from going from the theater to doing voice acting that was weird for you? Because like I've talked to Tim Russ, and he's talked about some of the. Which, by the way, if you're watching, you don't know who Tim Russ is. Tim Russ is Tuvok. He's the guy from Spaceballs who ain't found shit. He's all those things. He said that the challenge between the theater and the voice acting was, with the theater you have the crowd, you can interact with the crowd, you can feed off the crowd, but with voice acting it's just you and a microphone. Did you find that to be a challenge for you when you started doing the actual voice acting for the character Zordon?
Not really. I mean, it was different. And again, like you said, there was no crowd I was performing for. There was no audience per se. There was just me and the sound engineer, maybe the head writer Tony Oliver from time to time. But I did have that sort of experience when we filmed the character because the original cast was there and we traded lines back and forth. But other than that, I was never on set with them ever again. So
Mm.
after that first initial filming, I didn't see them again for 20 years. So whenever I would go into the recording booth to do the voice of the character, and I'm sure Mr. Russ has already talked about this, is that um, it's it's almost twice as hard as actually visually acting
Yeah.
because you have to convey all of the intention and emotion in a very compact amount of time. You have 4 seconds to say this line, and now count it down, beep, 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 boom, and say the line. And if you miss it, then they have to do a retake or whatever. So there was a kind of a short learning curve as far as um, getting used to hearing the beeps in the headphones. And luckily, the show was not Shakespeare. It wasn't anything grand or epic or anything like that. the lines were always fairly simple. And if you ever go back and you watch and you listen to what Zordon's talking about, it's all exposition. It's all about this is what this is what this is. Attend the viewing globe. A lot of repetition from Zordon about stuff because, of course, it was made for 5 and 6 year olds. It was a kids show. Um, so, I mean, but it was very interesting to learn a new aspect about what it was like to be in TV because I had known about voice acting. I had done a little bit of voice acting during my time in training, and I knew about ADR work, going back and recording lines that the film didn't actually pick up and stuff like that. So the learning curve was it was a very short, quick, fast uh, course in this is how you do it. Luckily, I was still very much a sponge back then. I was like, yeah, give me information. Let me know, how do I do this? And because I got to know the engineers pretty well, they would tag me and say, hey, can you help me out with this project? So I would go into another booth and I would do lines for them for whatever thing that they were working on. I got to do a couple of uh, loop groups things where I would go in and I would do voices for background. If somebody was like in a crowded restaurant, I would be one of the
Mm.
actors that was talking in the background, that kind of thing. So it was very interesting to learn about that end of the business, even though that's not why I moved out there, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. So for me, I think the moment I realized before Power Rangers came along, it was the Ninja Turtles. Like me and all my friends, it was all about Ninja Turtles and X-Men.
Yeah.
When I realized Power Rangers was taking over the world is when people stopped caring about Ninja Turtles and it was all about Power Rangers.
Yeah.
Like that was the shift for me. Now, I still cared about Ninja Turtles and I loved Power Rangers, but it seemed like the whole world was like, we're done with the heroes in the half shell. We want the Power Rangers. What was it like for you and your colleagues? At what point did you guys realize like this is no longer a show? This is becoming a cultural icon. And I think that gets lost on people these days because at one point in time, like Power Rangers was just as modern as Michael Jackson, Fresh Prince of Bel Air, anything else entertainment wise. Power Rangers was right there with it. And that's
Yeah.
hard for people to fathom. When did you guys realize this thing has exploded? And did you expect it to explode like that?
I didn't. I expected it would be a year-long gig because every year there were new cartoons that would show up, and the show would get replaced by another show. So I wasn't really sort of uh, privy to the long game of what Saban and those guys knew what they were doing. Because I think one of the secrets that you kind of touched on about Power Rangers replacing the Ninja Turtles was in the 80s, whenever He-Man or the Ninja Turtles became popular, they started off on the cartoon show, right? And you would see that on the show, but you didn't get the toys until 6 months later. You didn't get the toys until Christmas or something like that. The day that Power Rangers premiered, August 28th, 1993, everybody had a Red Ranger in their hand. The toys were out on the shelves before the show hit the airwaves. So I think that kind of like popped it up into the stratosphere because this is real. If I'm holding something in my hand, this is real. I didn't have to wait for it. So I think that's part of it. I didn't realize it until after I'd left LA because I left LA shortly after the show went on the air. Nothing to do with the show. I wasn't unhappy with the show or anything like that. I did feel very much like Zordon in the fact that I was on this show, but I was never really a part of it because I would only go in and do voices like every 5 or 6 weeks. These guys were on set every day, 6 days a week, 16 hours a day, working on it. And that's kind of the experience that I wanted to have when I went to LA, what it was like being on a set, being around the crew every day. And I kind of missed out on that. But by the time I was ready to leave LA, I was just kind of burned out. I was working 2 jobs, afraid I was going to be living under a bridge from week to week. So I was just kind of like, and again, I was 30 years old. I went out there to do something. I got to check that off my bucket list and said, okay, well, I guess maybe that's it. Maybe I'll just go back and do something else. And I remember Tony Oliver, trying to talk me down and saying, just give it 6 months, man. If you can just hang out for 6 months, it's going to get a lot better. And I'm like, dude, I can't. And so I ended up leaving and going back to the East Coast. And that Christmas, I remember going shopping with some friends, and there was this huge run on KB Toys. And I'm like, why is everybody, pounding on the doors for KB Toys? And that's the first time I saw the Power Chamber, which had my face on it. I was like, oh, wow. Oh, that's huge. And people were fighting over these toys. And I'm like, I'm never going to see a penny of that. That's awesome. So, I mean, that's where it hit me that, oh, yeah, Power Rangers is a big deal. That's big news. But when I got cast, I didn't have any idea where it was going to go from there. So,
and I feel like I have to point this out. Just it pains me to even do it, but I know somebody's going to ask. KB Toys used to be a gigantic toy chain back. This whole look. I'm 39 right now, but it's just like. It feels like we're stuck in a time warp, and now
right? So much has changed since then, man. So much has changed.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, man, those toys were just so iconic, and specifically, I remember the flip heads. The ones that were, I'm sure you know what I'm talking about, but there figurines where they would be suited up from the head down, but the head would flip and you would hit this back piece and then the head would flip up and then it would turn into like, the helmet would be on.
Yeah.
And I had a couple of those, not a lot. We didn't have a lot of money growing up, so we couldn't really afford those toys. But one Christmas we had opened up our door and so we heard a knock on the door, and we can only assume, because nobody ever took claim for this, we can only assume it was somebody from our church. There was this gigantic box that was just, I think it had something wrote on it like "to the Roman kids" or something like that. And we pull it in, not knowing what it is, and we open it up, and there's just brand new toys everywhere. And somebody had bought me those flip toys. So like that's another reason why I remember those specifically. But just the iconicness of them and like how much joy that little thing, made me. Because again, Power Rangers were pop culture, and
they were everywhere, man.
Yeah, and that's crazy. So you didn't get any kind of residuals or anything for them using your likeliness?
Oh, no. I mean, I made less than $1,000 on the show, and they made $1 billion the first year. So I mean, it's
whoa,
that's crazy. So yeah, it was a non-union show. They didn't pay the regular cast well either, and they did not get residuals. And that led to 3 of them exiting the show the following year or whatever. So. I mean, the original cast that I auditioned with and filmed with, Audrey Dubois was the original Yellow Ranger, and she played the character of Trini in that original pilot that we shot. And after the show got picked up, she tried to negotiate for a better contract, and they just replaced her. So that was sort of like a pattern for them.
Yeah.
Because when Tony took me into Haim's office to say, David wants to leave, and Haim was like, "Why do you want to leave?" And I'm like, "I'm just not very happy living in LA." And he goes, "So you don't want to stay?" And I'm like, I don't have a reason to stay. And he goes, "All right, we'll replace you." And that was it.
Jeez, that's crazy. That is absolutely crazy. Well, even with that being said, like, is there anything about that time frame when you think back, as your time as Zordon, is there anything that really sticks out more than the rest? Or maybe is it just the cultural impact that you had? Or when you think over that time, what really sticks out in your head more than anything else?
During that time, what sticks out in my head is how distant I felt from it. I didn't really feel like I was a part of it. The actual filming of the pilot was a lot of fun because I got to experience that and see what that was like. And that was a lot of fun. And I got to visit the juice bar set one day. And that was it. Other than that, I never saw like the inside of the command center, never saw the outside of the command center. But all of my best memories of Power Rangers and the character of Zordon happened much later. Once I started interacting with conventions and reconnecting with the other cast members and meeting all of the fans and doing stuff like this, this is the best time for me to be Zordon. So that's all. That's really all I kind of focus on. I don't really focus on what happened way back when. I'm very grateful for that because it allowed me to uh, have this very interesting life of being somebody's hero, and that's pretty cool. So.
Yeah, sure. What advice would you give to somebody who was trying to break into, I guess, voice acting? We'll just leave it at that. Is there any specific thing that you wish you would have learned early on that you could give somebody who's trying to break into that industry? Or is it just kind of, hey, just do what you got to do?
My best piece of advice would be just kind of be indifferent to stuff because if you go in and you get rejected and you get rejected and you get rejected, don't take any of that personally because I guarantee you that the people who are behind the camera looking for the role really don't know what they're looking for until it walks through the door.
Yeah.
They may have a little bit of an idea about what they're looking for, or they may have a certain type that they're looking for, but until that person actually walks through the door and says this, or delivers the line, or wears whatever outfit that they need, then they're going to say that's the guy. James Gunn just did a very interesting little bit, or I don't know how long ago he did it, but he talks about he didn't want to talk to Chris Pratt because he saw Chris Pratt as just like this chubby guy from Parks and Rec. He didn't see him as Star-Lord. And
Right.
so they auditioned like all of these guys, and he screen tested like 25 people, and he couldn't find the right guy. And they kind of tricked him into letting Chris read. And when Chris got in there, Chris had done the work to try to get in shape and to lose weight and to look like the character. And James Gunn says 12 seconds after he started, I said, that's the guy. That's him. So my best piece of advice is be yourself, be confident in your ability, but don't take anything personally. Just go in, do the best job you can, and say thank you. Be kind, because you never know who you're going to meet on the way up. You'll meet them on the way down too. So, make connections with people. That's really what's most important is making the right connections.
Yeah, sure. A couple more questions as we wind down here. What's
Yeah.
the most common thing when you go to a convention or if a fan were to stop you out on the street, whatever? What's the most common thing that people tell you about your time as Zordon? Is it basically how I fanboyed at the beginning of this? I was like, you were the voice, or what is the most common thing you hear?
Yeah. It's a lot of that. It's a lot of that. Oh man, I didn't realize it was you. And you look exactly the same, and that kind of thing, and that's a lot of fun. I mean, when I do the voice at conventions, I see these 39, 40, 42-year-old guys, and they just become 5 years old all over again. They're just like, oh my god, it's you. And so that's generally the kind of reaction that I get.
Yeah. And then this wasn't in my notes, but since we started with this, I kind of want to end with this. What kind of are you still watching anime?
Not really.
Not really.
I don't follow a lot of that stuff. I mean, I watch a lot of the Miyazaki movies, but I don't really keep up with a lot of. I mean, every now and then I'll catch episodes of Kamen Rider, but that's not anime. That's more tokusatsu kind of stuff. But I mean, I keep my finger on what's coming out, but a lot of things like K-pop Demon Hunters, it
Yeah.
doesn't hit me in the chest and say, oh, I need to watch that. And I don't know if that's just a factor of me being older or if it's just me feeling like I'm too separated from the source, so I'm not going to get understanding. And so I'm like, okay, I don't know. So no, to answer your question, no, unfortunately I don't.
Yeah, I understand because I downloaded Crunchyroll about a month ago, and I ended up just watching original Dragon Ball. Like I tried watching. There's some I can't remember the name of it because I couldn't pronounce it in my head, so I just didn't learn it. But there's some brand new anime out where like the entire world is on a cliff, and they just don't want anything to do with literal trash. Like if it's trash, they throw it into the pit. And if you're a criminal, you get thrown into the pit with all the trash. And there's a whole world underneath where all these people live in trash. And I'm sitting here, I'm like, I can't do this. It's a brand new anime too. I could start at the beginning, but I'm just like,
It's
yeah,
very interesting how anime has influenced a lot of animation these days, though. And
yeah,
if you watch the Marvel cartoons that they have on Disney Plus, like What If, that's very anime inspired. I mean, it's quick, it's fast, it's flashy. I mean, that's very anime.
yeah. And then I'm gonna put you on the spot a little bit here. So if we can't do this, I could take this part out, no problem. I did the same thing to Tim Russ. I'm doing it to you too. So here
Sure.
we go. If you could deliver one last Zordon message to all the people out there watching today, what would it be?
Rangers, this is Zordon. Just a reminder, may the power protect you.
Ah, that is so awesome. Oh god, I've waited 39 years for that. That was fucking awesome. Okay, anyway, so first and foremost, I just want to start by ending this by saying thank you for all the enjoyment that you
My
guys
pleasure.
gave
My
me.
pleasure. Yeah, it was great to be here.
It yeah, it was Power Rangers was just, again, you can't explain to somebody who wasn't there. It was such a huge part of pop culture, and it was something that I would always watch before I'd go to school.
Yeah.
And every single day, 8 o'clock before we go to school, that was on. I couldn't catch every single episode, so I only caught like up until the Megazord would come together, and then I would have to split and go to
Right.
school.
Right.
But even then, like, it didn't matter. Just as long as I could watch some of it, and then obviously as it evolved, the show evolved and all that good stuff, but it was always something that always brought me joy. And man, I just thank you so much for that. That's all I can say. And
My pleasure.
lastly, I always give the last couple of minutes to my guests. If there's anything you want to plug, social medias, how people can find you, any websites, any upcoming appearances, the floor is yours, man.
Yeah, yeah. I'll be in Lafayette, Indiana, in near the end of October, and then in November I'll be at Fandom.com out in California, Saratoga Comic Con in New York, and at Ranger Stop in Orlando, Florida, in November. So if you guys want to come out and say hi, tell me all about your Ranger stories, I'll be there to listen.
Thank you very much for your time, my man. It's been a pleasure.
You bet. Great to meet you.